What you're looking at is the most anticipated car of all time. With more than 500,000 pre-orders on the books, the Tesla Model 3 has piqued the interest of more people around the world than any car in history, riding to market on a wave of hype unlike anything I've seen since the glory days of bombastic iPhone launches.
That alone is big news, but the anticipation around Tesla's most affordable car yet is really just the beginning. This, you see, isn't just a car. This marks the turning point for Tesla as it moves from niche to mass market. The company's already captured the hearts and minds of millions, but now it needs to capture their wallets too. So join me as I find out if the fabled $35,000 electric car that Elon Musk has been promising us for oh so long lives up to all its potential. But there's one caveat I need to get out of the way first. This car costs $57,000.
Yes, the base Model 3 starts at just $35,000, but if you are up early enough to get one of the first pre-orders and can order your car now, you'll have to step up a bit. Only the $44,000 long-range car is available now, rated for 310 miles on a charge. The base car does a still healthy 220. Then add in the $5,000 premium package for things like heated seats and tinted glass, which you'll want. Add another $5,000 for Autopilot, $1,500 for the wheels, $1,000 for the red paint, and a final $1,000 destination charge, and you get the final price of our test car, $57,500. The good news is all those prices are before state and federal EV incentives, which should see you saving at least $7,500, at least until those disappear.
So instead of Chevy Bolt EV money, we're actually talking closer to BMW 5 Series money, or a very nicely equipped 330e hybrid. That's important context to keep in mind as we talk about what makes this car special. And it is very special, starting with how you unlock it. This is not an Amex Centurion Black card. Roadshow doesn't pay that well. This is the key. Tap it here like so, and the car unlocks. Now, using this does mean no proper keyless entry, but the car can also pair to your phone over Bluetooth. So as you approach, the car automatically unlocks itself and giving you access to this interior, which is also unique.
To call this space Spartan would be an ironic understatement. The Model 3 interior has been reduced to its bare essentials, though whether in the name of design purity or cost-cutting depends on whether you're a Tesla optimist or a pessimist. Regardless, the resulting simplicity creates an amazingly open, zen-like atmosphere. I half expect to smell incense whenever I sit down. The glass roof magnifies that feeling, and while I do worry about very sunny days, the Model X tinting does a fair job of keeping things cool, and I expect it should do the same here. The glass also adds headroom, and while cargo capacity is down quite a bit over the bigger sedan, 15 cubic feet versus the Model S's 30, there is 2 more cubic feet than in the BMW 3 Series. Thank you, Frank. Flip the seats down for acres of space, and while I wish it were a proper hatchback, the curious trunk opening is big enough to accommodate most bits of cargo without trouble. But to really experience the most controversial part, we need to look closer at that dashboard.
When the Model S hit the market, its 17-inch vertically oriented display was a revolution, but that's nothing compared to the complete reinvention that we have here in the Model 3. Now we have this 15-inch landscape-oriented display, and basically nothing else. I don't even have a gauge cluster behind the steering wheel. Everything is on this display, including the speedometer, which shows in the upper left. Now, the Model 3 isn't the first car with a centrally mounted speedo. In fact, the Mini had one about 60 years ago. But typically they're protected by some kind of shroud. Instead, here we have this high reflectivity display that can be a little bit hard to read in direct sunlight. But the bigger issue is how often you have to be digging through all these menus. If I want to adjust the speed of the wipers, for example, I have to do it here. Let me give an example, though. If you want to change the follow distance of the adaptive cruise control, you tap into Vehicle Settings, go into Autopilot, and then hit plus or minus here in the display. On the Model S or the Model X, there's a dedicated stalk in the lower left, so it's really easy to change. That, I think, is a big step backwards. But there's so much to talk about here. We've actually filmed a separate video with a deep dive of all the Model 3's interface. You'll want to check that out.
Once you're in motion, the left side of the display becomes dominated by the Autopilot Feedback, with the speedometer positioned way up at the top as close to your line of sight as possible. And it isn't really that far of a glance away from the road, and you'll quickly get used to it. But constantly having to reach over to adjust things like cruise control gets very annoying very quickly. While the ride quality may not be quite up to BMW levels, that addictive torque and throttle response make the Model 3 a car that you will just want to drive and drive. And with 310 miles of range on tap, you can go pretty far. Don't use too much of that torque, and you'll burn through that charge pretty quickly. Drive sensibly though, and you shouldn't have to spend too much time waiting around at superchargers, which by the way you'll now need to pay for. Charging doesn't come free with the Model 3, but with a full tank of electrons costing somewhere around $10, it's a hell of a lot cheaper than gas. And what about Tesla's fabled Autopilot? The Model 3 has 8 cameras plus radar and ultrasonic sensors, and they give it bulletproof adaptive cruise and one of the best lane centering systems on the market. On the highway at least, where it'll even change lanes for you. On back roads like these though, the auto steer system continues to be unreliable at best.
Pretty much everything else that you do once you get in the car is through this 15-inch touchscreen that's mounted in the center of the dashboard. And almost everything, because there are almost no other physical controls in this car. The majority of things that you'll need to do frequently are on the left side of the display. About a third of the display has been marked off for display information. Right now it's showing me that we've got a couple of doors open, but as we're driving, this display becomes your autopilot information, showing you the sensors that the car is seeing, if it detects a car ahead of you, if it can see the lines in the road, things like that. And where you see the P here indicating that we're in park, that becomes your speedometer, because there is no gauge cluster behind the steering wheel. You need to look over here instead. That actually works better than you might think, but there are some problems with this interface that we're going to get through. So you can swipe through different interfaces here to get through different things. And the first one, you can toggle the camera if you want to see what's behind you. Hit this to bring up the charging information. So if you're sitting on a supercharger, you can get information about how that's going right now. We're at 65%. And by the way, supercharging is not free on the Model 3. You'll have to pay for it. Or you can do voice recognition by tapping this microphone. Navigate to Starbucks. Now this works actually really nicely. You can speak in an intuitive way. You don't have to say any special commands. It works very quickly as well, so long as you have an internet connection. If your phone is offline, if the car is offline, voice recognition simply doesn't work. And it doesn't even tell you it doesn't work. It just stops responding. That's a little bit unfortunate. Swipe right to bring up the windshield wiper controls, which are, yes, here on the touchscreen. You can quickly mist by tapping the button on the side, but if you want to actually control them manually, not use the automatic system, you tap here. And at that point, you can adjust the speed of the wipers or put them on intermittent mode. Yes, you have to use the touchscreen for that. Swipe again to get to your trip meter, which you have quite a few in here as a matter of fact. And then swipe one more time to get to the tire pressure information. Finally, if you're in the middle of a phone call, there's actually a fifth screen that appears right here. And that's important to note, because if you're calling somebody and you need to turn on the windshield wipers, it's 3 swipes to the left and then a tap to turn on the wipers. And I mention that because that's exactly what happened to me as I was driving here on the phone, misting, and the wipers didn't turn themselves on, so I had to do it manually. 3 swipes and a tap to turn on wipers is just unsafe, in my opinion. On the right, we've got Tesla's navigation system, which is very quick and intuitive to use. You have satellite imagery if you want to, or you can go to a map information. The traffic information is quite good on here, and again, you've got voice recognition, which works quite well. Digging a little bit deeper, we can now get into the settings for the car, and there are quite a few, just like we've seen on the Model S, going for everything from turning on the lights, turning off the fog lights, locking and unlocking if you walk away, settings like that. Driving modes, how you want your steering to be, if you want a lot of resistance or low resistance, how much regenerative braking you want is all in here. And you can turn on auto steer and auto lane change and autopilot. The really important thing to note on this screen is the cruise follow distance. This is the distance between you and the car ahead of you that autopilot will maintain for you. This is something that you could traditionally adjust on a Tesla just by twisting the end of the cruise control stalk. But on the Model 3, they've gotten rid of that stalk. So if you want to change that distance, you actually need to tap into vehicle settings, go over to autopilot, and then hit plus or minus on this screen. And that is, again, something that's unsafe to do while you are driving. And I had to change this quite a bit depending on traffic conditions and weather. Having to go through 3 menus to do that, again, it's just not a good thing. You can manually set the power brake and also adjust the headlights through here as well. And finally, open the glove box. Climate control settings are here as well, automatic. And if you want to adjust the vents, you do that through the touchscreen as well, just like the Porsche Panamera. Seat heaters are here, front and rear defrosters, and the music interface, which slides up from the bottom. You've got Slacker radio, streaming, tune-in as well, and Bluetooth pairing here. And finally, you can very quickly and easily pair your Bluetooth devices even while you're driving, which I admit is a pretty nice thing. That's everything that you can do on the display, and there's really not that much else that you can do in the car because there aren't many physical controls. On the steering wheel here, we've got a couple of scroll wheels like you might find on a mouse. Left is volume control. On the right, you click this in to bring up the voice control, and you click the left one to mute or unmute the sound. You can also click them left or right to skip tracks. On the left, we have the turn signal, and you can flash your headlights, put on the high beams, or use the quick mist for the wiper. But again, if you want to actually turn the wipers on, you need the touchscreen for that. And then on the right is the Tesla shifter to go reverse or drive. And this is how you engage cruise control in the Model 3. Double tap this down to engage cruise control and turn on autopilot, turn it up again to cancel. There's actually a lot more storage in the Model 3 than the Model S, which is nice. We've got cup holders all over the place, a lot of cubbies. You can pop this open and you've got a nice deep convex system here. Flip this up and there's a nice set of 2 chargers here with, right now we've got Lightning and a USB Type-C. But you can actually flip this up and change the cables that are in there. So if you have a different type, if you're still rocking a micro USB phone, you can plug that in here too. In the back seat, there's plenty of headroom, even for me, and I sit pretty tall in a car. That's largely thanks to this glass roof. The rear seats fold down, giving you even more cargo space. And up front, we've got the frunk, which gives you a couple more cubic feet of space for an overnighter bag or something like that. The interior of the Model 3 is very distinctive, and I like it a lot. I love the simplicity. But I have to say that too many compromises have been made in the name of design simplicity. There simply needs to be more physical controls, especially for things like cruise control and windshield wipers. This car needs to be safe before it needs to be a nice design icon. And I think it's a little bit unfortunate because otherwise, it's a really great car. With all the talk about the interior and the displays out of the way, we can finally move on to the best part of the Model 3, and that is how it drives. This car is really, really fun. With a 0 to 60 time in the 5-second range, it is really, really fast off the line and very, very engaging. But more interesting is the handling. This being a lighter car than the Model S, it's definitely more responsive, and we've got a smaller steering wheel with sharper steering too, which makes it feel very responsive out in the corners. It's not a pure driver's car, not a sports car exactly. And if I have to pick any nit, it's that it's ultimately not quite the same ride quality as a BMW 3 Series, but overall, this is just a lot of fun. I feel like I could go on for days talking about the Model 3, and I think that's part of the charm of this car. It just feels so different than any other sedan out there on the market, even the Model S. And while different is sometimes good and different is sometimes not so good, if you can deal with the occasionally clunky interface, if you can keep your phone charged, and if you don't have to stray too far from the supercharger network, the Model 3 really is worth the wait.